I recently made a video making the claim that UFC 289 is a historically bad card, and after thinking about it, I wanted to go through the numbers and actually scientifically prove that UFC 289 is one of the worst pay-per-views of all time. To do this, I need an actual scoring criteria so that I can give each pay-per-view a score. Bloody Elbow recently had an online Twitter spat with Mick Maynard complaining about the lack of ranked fighters on the UFC card, Kai Kara France versus Amir Albazi, complaining that there were only 3 ranked fighters out of the 26 fighters competing that night. So that would be a good place to start. Each ranked fighter on the pay-per-view main card would receive 1 point. Naturally, each fighter ranked in the top 5 would be worth more than just a ranked fighter. So I'm giving each top 5 fighter 2 points. From there, I drew the conclusion that each champion would be ranked 3 points, with interim champions being considered the number 1 contender and only being ranked 2 points. What about the hot prospects or undefeated fighters that are still working their way up the rankings? I decided that each undefeated fighter would be worth 1 point. Each 5-fight win streak in the UFC is worth 1 bonus point. Each fighter with a 10-fight win streak is worth 2 bonus points. And each fighter with a 15-fight win streak is worth 3 bonus points. I wanted to reward good matchmaking, and so I decided that each matchup with at least 3 points on either side would get 1 bonus point. And with that, I went through all of the UFC pay-per-view cards of this year, starting with UFC 289, Nunes versus Aldana. We start off with a headliner. Amanda Nunes is the champion and thus gets 3 points. Irene Aldana, the top 5, and gets 2 points. Beneil Dariush is ranked in the top 5 and gets 2 points. He is also on an 8-fight win streak, and so he gets 1 bonus point. Charles Oliveira is ranked within the top 5 and he gets 2 points. The only other fighter that gets any points on this card is Dan Ige, who's ranked, thus gets 1 point. Next we go back with Aljamain Sterling taking on Henry Cejudo. As Henry Cejudo retired a champion, I didn't give him the 3 points as being a champion, but I do rank him within the top 5, and thus he gets 2 points. And he is on a 6-fight win streak for a total of 3 points. Aljamain Sterling is the champion for 3, and he is on an 8-fight win streak, so he gets 1 bonus point for a total of 4. With Sterling sitting at 4 and Cejudo at 3, they qualify for the bonus point for an exciting matchup. We have Bilal Muhammad and Gilbert Burns are both in the top 5, but Bilal Muhammad is on an 8-fight win streak, making that 3 points. Yan Xiaonan and Jessica Andrade are both ranked, but Andrade gets 1 bonus point for being in the top 5. Also on the main card, Movsar Evloev taking on Diego Lopez. Movsar is ranked, he's on a 6-fight win streak, and he's undefeated, making that a total of 3 points. UFC 287, Pereira versus Adesanya 2. Pereira is a champion, worth 3 points. Adesanya is in the top 5, ranked 2 points. Masvidal and Burns are both ranked, but Burns is in the top 5, getting him an extra point. Font is ranked, and Yanez is on a 5-fight win streak. The only other points on the main card belong to Raul Rosas Jr., who gets 1 point for being undefeated. UFC 286, Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman 3. Leon Edwards gets an impressive 5 points, 3 for being the champion, and 2 for being on a 10-fight win streak. Kamaru Usman gets only 2 points, being a top 5 ranked fighter. Gaethje also gets 2 points for being ranked in the top 5. Fiziev gets 2 points himself, 1 point for being ranked, and 1 bonus point for his 6-fight win streak. Jennifer Maia and Casey O'Neill each get 1 point for being ranked. Casey O'Neill gets 1 additional bonus point for being undefeated heading into UFC 286. Marvin Vettori and Roman Dolidze are both ranked, and Vettori gets 1 additional bonus point for being ranked in the top 5. That brings us to UFC 285. John Jones versus Cyril Gane. John Jones goes into the event on an unprecedented 17-fight undefeated streak, getting him the maximum total of 3 bonus points. I am also giving him the bonus point for being an undefeated fighter, and I am rating him as a top 5 heavyweight for a total of 6 points. Cyril Gane is in the top 5 for 2 points. Alexa Grasso is a top 5 ranked fighter for 2 points. Valentina Shevchenko is the champion with 3 points and is on a 9-fight win streak for 1 bonus point. Shavkat Rakhmonov is both ranked and undefeated for a total of 2 points. Jeff Neal is ranked, Gamrot is ranked, Jalen Turner is ranked and on a 5-fight win streak, and Bo Nickel is undefeated. UFC 284, Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski. Islam Makhachev is a champion of his weight division and is on an impressive 11-fight win streak for a total of 5 points. Alexander Volkanovski is a champion of the featherweight division and is on an equally impressive 12-fight win streak. With these two champions clashing, they get 1 bonus point for having an exciting matchup. Yair Rodriguez is ranked in the top 5, and Josh Emmett is also ranked in the top 5 and is on a 5-fight win streak. UFC 283, Glover Teixeira versus Jamal Hill. Jamal Hill and Glover Teixeira are both ranked in the top 5 for 2 points each. Brandon Moreno is ranked in the top 5 for 2 points. Davison Figueiredo is the champion for 3 points. Gilbert Burns is ranked in the top 5, going up against Neil Magny, who's ranked. Lauren Murphy and Jessica Andrade are both ranked in the top 5, and Johnny Walker and Paul Craig are both ranked for 1 point each. That's all of the pay-per-views that we've had so far this year. Let's look ahead to July to see where UFC 290 falls in the UFC pay-per-view power rankings. Alexander Volkanovski is the featherweight champion and gets 3 points as a result. Yair Rodriguez, while the interim champion, I am considering that the #1 contender belt, and I give him 2 points for being in the top 5. Brandon Moreno is the champion, and he's taking on Pantoja, who gets 2 points for being in the top 5. Bo Nickel is undefeated. Robert Whitaker is in the top 5. Dricus du Plessis is ranked and is on a 5-fight win streak. Jalen Turner and Dan Hooker both receive 1 point for being ranked. With the results in, let's go through the UFC main card pay-per-views to see how each pay-per-view did and where they stack up in the rankings for 2023. In #1 position, we have UFC 285, John Jones vs. Cyril Gane with 21 points. Second place, Sterling vs. Cejudo at 19 points. Third place, Hill vs. Glover at 18. Edwards vs. Usman and Volkanovski vs. Yair tie at 17 points. Islam Makhachev vs. Alexander Volkanovski ranks 3rd to last with 16 points. Amanda Nunes vs. Irene Aldana is tied for last with Adesanya vs. Pereira 3 with 11 points each. These results are surprising to me. UFC 289 tying with UFC 287 doesn't seem right to me. Looking through our criteria, Dariush vs. Oliveira scores a total of 5 points, which is equal to Burns vs. Masvidal and Font vs. Yanez. This scoring criteria really puts a lot of emphasis on the records of these fighters and not necessarily how exciting each of these fights are going to be. For example, Yan Xiaonan vs. Jessica Andrade ranked higher than Rob Font vs. Adrian Yanez. But which fight are you really looking forward to the most? Looking through my results, I knew I wasn't capturing the essence of what made a UFC pay-per-view exciting to watch. Sure, this does a good job of reflecting the fighters' records, and especially rewarding high win streaks. But does it really capture the excitement of Gaethje versus Fiziev or Rob Font versus Adrian Yanez? I knew that I had to be missing something. I needed something that could reflect the excitement that fans were feeling towards a certain fighter. Something that captured the momentum that the fighters were bringing into these matchups with them. And after thinking about it for a while, I came up with something. My solution was to reward fighters for recently being in big and exciting matchups. And so, I scored each fighter that headlined in their last fight 1 point, and each fighter that headlined in their last fight that was a pay-per-view 2 points. For example, Charles Oliveira fighting in UFC 289. His last fight, he was headlining against Islam Makhachev in UFC 280. Thus, he would get an additional +2 bonus points for headlining in a pay-per-view in his last fight. Amanda Nunes headlined a pay-per-view in her last fight. She gets +2 points. Aljamain Sterling and Cejudo, neither of which headlined in their last fight. Yan Xiaonan surprisingly headlined in her last fight. Similarly did Jessica Andrade. Alex Pereira and Israel Adesanya both headlined in the main event of a pay-per-view in their last fight, and thus they get 2 bonus points each. Jorge Masvidal headlined against Colby Covington in his last fight and gets +2 bonus points. And Rob Font headlined against Marlon Chito Vera in his last fight. While not being a pay-per-view, he still gets 1 bonus point. Leon Edwards and Kamaru Usman both headlined in their last fights against each other, and they get +2 bonus points each. Justin Gaethje in his fight against Fiziev had recently headlined against Charles Oliveira in his last fight and gets +2 bonus points. Fiziev headlined against RDA in his last fight and gets 1 bonus point as a result. John Jones and Cyril Gane both headlined in their last fights. John Jones headlining a pay-per-view. Alexa Grasso headlined in her last fight against Viviane Araújo. Shevchenko did not headline her last fight. Islam Makhachev headlined a pay-per-view in their last fight for +2 points. Yair Rodriguez and Josh Emmett both headlined their own fight nights for 1 point each. Glover Teixeira headlined a pay-per-view in his last fight. Jamal Hill headlined a fight night in his last fight. Moreno and Figueiredo, neither of which headlined their own fight. And Jessica Andrade, fighting in UFC 283, headlined in her last fight. That brings us to UFC 290, getting 2 bonus points for Alexander Volkanovski headlining in a pay-per-view in his last fight. I think that this gives us a bit more of an accurate depiction of the excitement and the quality of these pay-per-view cards coming into them. We have UFC 285, John Jones versus Cyril Gane, ranked first with 27 points. Second after that is UFC 286, Leon Edwards versus Kamaru Usman 3, sitting right underneath it with 26. UFC 283, Jamal Hill versus Glover Teixeira is ranked third with 23 points. Then we have 21, Sterling versus Cejudo, tied with Islam versus Volkanovski. Then we have UFC 290, Volkanovski versus Yair with 19, tied with Pereira versus Adesanya. And last, we get Nunes versus Aldana, sitting at 16 points. I think this captures that there is really a lack of momentum on UFC 289. And though there are 2 good matchups with Amanda Nunes versus Irene Aldana and Beneil Dariush versus Charles Oliveira, there just is nothing else on that pay-per-view, whereas all of these other pay-per-views still have 1 or 2 points on the undercard that elevate them past the quality that we are seeing at UFC 289. Keep in mind, this criteria is completely made up. The excitement people have for pay-per-views is completely subjective and varies person to person. Let me know which scoring criteria you thought was good, which scoring criteria you thought was bad, and if you have ideas for any other kind of scoring criteria that you'd like to see me use. Also, let me know if you'd like to see me rate more pay-per-views going even further into the past, and maybe we can see which pay-per-view is the best of all time and which one is the worst. Thank you all for listening, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week.